So, hi, everybody. Pastor Paul here, going live, talking about Jesus being a bad evangelical. And I very much believe in the idea that if Jesus were on earth today, he would not be happy with what he sees in the evangelical church. In fact, I do think it is absolutely 100% reasonable to believe that Jesus would be turning over tables in our evangelical churches today. And so I'm looking for, I've been writing an ebook. Sorry, I've been away for a while. Hi, Chuck. How you doing? Good to see you. I've been away from social media for a while because I've been writing and working on a revamp of my website and a whole bunch of new cool writing projects. And not the least of which is my new my webinar that's coming up this Sunday, Jesus the Bad Evangelical, and a couple of Deconstruction You cohorts that I have coming up that I'll tell you about, or you can find more information about in the link tree in my bio. Hi, Christina. Thank you for signing up for my Patreon page and signing up for the Decon You cohort. It's going to be so much fun. Hi, Random New Mexico Thoughts. I like that. Chuck says he's been missing my live. You guys are awesome. Yeah, let me know where you're joining from. And I want to give you the reasons why I think Jesus is a bad evangelical. And if he were on earth today, he would not be happy with the evangelical church. And just, hi, Southern California. Good to see you. Hi, Louisiana. Good to see you. Good to get to hang out with everybody again. And just let me tell you the bottom line. Hi, Oregon on TikTok. Good to see you. The bottom line of why I think Jesus would be very angry at the evangelical church were he with us today in the flesh would be because evangelical people just seem to be real assholes these days. And when I read the Bible, Jesus loved hanging out with sinners and not so much with assholes, particularly religious assholes. So that would be the bottom line and the easy answer right there. Oregon's here, Kentucky's here on TikTok, Louisiana with us on YouTube. And so, yeah, I just want to celebrate this moment together with you. I just bless the energy of your spirit and of your heart. Hi, Illinois. Rachel, good to see you. I just tell you, you're amazing, that God thinks you're amazing. And I think you're amazing. And I am honored to join with you, our spirits together in this moment of time together. So I invite heaven and the spirit of heaven to come and join and hang out with us. Thank you, Rachel, for following me on TikTok. Yeah. So just take a moment. Take in a deep breath before we really get into the discussion and just start to think about what does it feel like to be connected together and connected, our spirits connected to heaven. Just gives me a feel of welfare. And Jeremiah 29:7 says, pray for the welfare of your city, for in its welfare you will find your welfare. Thanks for the gift on TikTok. I'll answer some questions in just a bit, Rachel. That's a great question about anger during grief. Anger is a very, very valid and underrated emotion. Like I just said, Jesus turned over tables, and I don't think he turned over tables because he thoughtfully said, I believe turning over tables thus will do this action today. I think he was pissed off and lost his shit. So yes, you should have anger during grief. You can be angry at God. If you read the Psalms, man, the writers of the Psalms were so angry at God. So I just bless you to feel your feelings during that time of grief and actually processing those feelings through, why am I mad? Who am I mad at? What happened in the midst of this to make me angry is where moving forward begins. Yeah. So yeah, I'm sorry. And I will answer questions. I do want to stay on course of talking about Jesus, bad evangelical, and our webinar coming up in our Decon You cohort. So bless you guys. I bless your spirit with welfare. That word welfare is the Hebrew term shalom. And and it means wholeness. It doesn't mean like peace or absence of conflict. It means wholeness in all circumstances, to be as we were at creation, to be fully restored and reconciled to God. So I bless you with welfare today from heaven as we speak together. And again, if you're just joining us, let me know where you're from. And I'm just talking today on the topic of Jesus was a bad evangelical. And I wrote down some reasons. I've been writing an ebook that someday I'll publish and get out, or maybe I'll write it as a full book. But let me tell you some of the reasons I believe that Jesus was a bad evangelical. So Jesus refused to get bogged down in the politically divisive issues of the day. Hi, St. Louis. Hi from the buckle of the Bible Belt. Trump 2020. That's 2026. That's interesting. I wonder why he's 2026 now. I can give you some advice in just a bit. But yeah, so when the Pharisees came and asked Jesus, what do you think about these taxes? That was one of the most politically divisive issues of the day. And it would be like, somebody coming, Jesus, what do you think about voter fraud? And him laughing and going, I'm not even going to talk about something that stupid. And I think he was saying the same. I'm not going to get involved in your inconsequential discussions about theological partisan concepts. I care about issues that matter to people. And so Jesus refused to get down. So they had these guys, zealots around. If Jesus really wanted Christians to take back the government, to make America great again, hi, Detroit, glad you're with me on TikTok, then he could have easily demonstrated this in the Bible. There were these zealots all around that wanted to create these terrorist acts so that Rome would finally get tired of dominating them and leave. And they were called the zealots. And Jesus never once said, hey, zealot, great job. Zealots, keep it up. Let's go show Rome that we should be in charge. Hey, zealots, great idea. Let's go take back the government and make Israel great again. Never did Jesus do anything that indicated in any way that he would be in line with a partisan right-wing evangelical church. Not even for a second. There's not anything that would make me think there's an indicator that Jesus would have a heart for what evangelicals truly believe in, which is a nationalistic, race-based, or at least culturally based, which is a Euro-white, culturally based religion that should not only be in charge of the religious mindset of the country, but be in charge of the governmental and the government and the governmental mindset of the country. And that was fully the belief of the Pharisees. They believed that their Jewish race and religion should be in charge of Israel. And when they were in charge of Israel, Israel would be made great again. They were megas, make Israel great again, believers. And when Israel was great again, God's plan could move forward on earth. And Jesus said, you're blind and don't know what's happening right in front of your eyes because you've been blinded by your partisan religious beliefs. And he would say exactly the same thing to evangelicals today. Second reason I believe Jesus was a bad evangelical, he cared more about people than religious codes. He didn't spend a lot of time telling people you're sinners. In fact, we have almost no evidence of when he had interaction with sinners, he would say, I love you, but I hate your sin. We do have the one story, which is a random story not written by John that landed in the Gospel of John of the woman caught in adultery, where we have the verse that says, go and sin no more. The Bible never, by the way, never once says, love the sinner, hate the sin. There is no such verse in the Bible at all. But the Bible does say that Jesus turned to the woman and said, go and sin no more. And evangelicals love that verse. Yes, we get to tell people they're sinners, totally ignoring the fact that before that happened, Jesus put his reputation and, in fact, his life on the line because there were people there holding rocks ready to stone this woman, as was allowed and the going mindset of the culture. And instead, Jesus jumped between those holding the rocks and the woman who, by his own rules of his own religion, could legally be stoned. And he said, nobody's throwing a rock at this woman today. He totally chased away the condemners. And then he turned to her and said, and neither do I condemn you. You are completely without condemnation and sin. And she said, wow, really? And then at the very end of all of that, he said, go and sin no more. And maybe that was like, live a different life. But at very least, if you want to say go and sin no more to somebody, spend time chasing away their condemners and taking away their condemnation first. Then you're following the model of Jesus. I see somebody asking me to explain who I am. I'm not going to do that right now. You can go read my bio. You can go check out my website. There's all kinds of stuff about that. I'm explaining something right now. So thank you for asking, though. And then on that, my next point of why Jesus was a bad evangelical was the fact that sinners loved him and religious people hated his guts. And it would be the same today. If Jesus were in the flesh on earth today, evangelicals would passionately hate him and probably try to find some way to discredit him, if not kill him. So sinners loved him. Religious people hated him. Almost every time Jesus talks about people who won't inherit the kingdom of heaven, verses we translate as Jesus telling about hell, he was always, and I would say 99.9% of the time, he was talking about religious people who were rule givers. He was saying they are the ones that will not inherit the kingdom of heaven. If you're religious and a rule giver, he says, you won't inherit the kingdom of heaven. And I won't go much more deeply in that. But when he was talking about the kingdom of heaven, he was talking about something on earth, not in eternity. And that's a big place where Christians really make big mistakes. And so that's another reason why Jesus was a really bad evangelical. He was not a single issue voter. He would not be an abortion only voter. Jesus never once in the slightest ever talked about abortion or homosexuality. And this was despite the fact that the Romans had a practice called exposure, where they would leave babies on the side of the road, that a father, not the mother had no say in it, because women, kind of like in evangelicalism today, women weren't considered to be decision makers in their home or somebody worthy of making decisions or leading. So only the father had the choice. And the father, if he didn't like the baby for any reason, including that the baby was female, which was often the case, they would leave the baby out on the side of the road to be exposed to the elements, carried away by an animal, or adopted in another family. And Jesus never once felt it important enough to say, that is the sin that's going to bring down the Roman Empire. That is the sin that matters to God more than anything else. Does Jesus, does God love abortion? I say it all the time. No, nobody celebrates, yay, an abortion happened today. We know it's a difficult time and decision time for women and for their partners, their husbands, whoever is in that decision with them, their family. But to say that Jesus indicates that was the number one issue of God that should make us single issue voters, that will vote incompetent, amoral people into office because they claim to be extreme anti-abortionists, isn't reflected in the story of Jesus at all. So Jesus would have been a really, really bad evangelical from that perspective today. Do I have any of my moderators here? We have a shouter always typing in caps. So let me get that out of the way so you guys can still enjoy our site. So that's another reason Jesus was a very bad evangelical. Let me take a quick break in telling you the reasons that I believe Jesus was a bad evangelical, and tell you that I have a webinar coming up on Sunday called Jesus the Bad Evangelical, a Deconstruction Youth Seminar. A lot of people have asked me as we've been going along is if I would do some sort of class or discussion group about deconstruction. Is it okay? All right. Looks like we need to block somebody here on TikTok. Let me get that taken out of the way. If I have any moderators on, guys, help me out. We got some real idiots coming on, it looks like, on TikTok. but that's nothing new in TikTok. And probably they're Christians saying that stuff. And so many of you have asked, can you do something to have a discussion group about deconstruction? And so I have a cohort coming up called Deconstruction You. If you're on YouTube, you can see what the major themes are going to be. But so a webinar coming up on Sunday that's absolutely free. We'll webinar together on Zoom and talk about Jesus, the Bad Evangelical, and why I believe Jesus was the original deconstructionist of religion. In fact, he was such a deconstructionist that he pointed at the temple and said, you know what? There's not going to be one stone of that thing standing on another. He was, without a question, the first deconstructionist of religion. And he was a radical deconstructionist because he said, not only are the ideas of the church going to be torn down, but the church building itself will be torn down. And I think we're seeing the same thing happen in our culture today, that evangelicalism is being torn down and the buildings are starting to be emptied out because people are saying, hell no, we won't go anymore. Christians are very, very upset and frightened about this. I think God is way less upset and frightened about it than people who claim to be God's people are upset and frightened about it. So is it okay to deconstruct is like our first question we ask in Deconstruction You. And so we're going to talk about that on Sunday in this free webinar. So I would love for you guys to sign up. If you go to my bio on YouTube or TikTok, there's a link tree that you can click on. And the top link on the link tree is for Sunday's webinar. And if you want to go ahead and sign up for the cohorts, we're going to have a cohort locally here in Central California where I live, where we'll do it in person, a 5-week cohort, and or we'll do one online as well. And you can go find out about those as well on the links in the link tree in my bio. So webinar on Sunday, Jesus, the Bad Evangelical, absolutely free to anyone who wants to join. And then we have 2 cohorts coming up that we're going to limit the amount of people that can sign up. So jump on those as well. And we're going to talk about what does deconstruction look like. And for those of you on YouTube, you can see the major themes of deconstruction. And so I'll read them for those of you that are on TikTok and can't see them. Is deconstruction okay? Number 2 is the Trinity. Who are they and who am I? Like, how do we decipher who God is and our relationship with God as we're in deconstruction? Third is the Bible is not what you think. How did you say to find those meetings? So if you go to my bio, there's a link tree link in my bio on TikTok and YouTube. And if you click on that link tree, the top link is for the webinar, which is on Sunday, and the second link is for the cohorts themselves and for more info on the cohorts. So you can go sign up and find out there. So yeah, just go to my bio, click on the link tree, and it'll take you to the info on my websites. Third is the Bible is not what you think. How to interpret the Bible differently without becoming a heretic. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Number 4, what the hell should we believe about eternity? Number 5, race, nationalism, and religious exclusivity. Number 6, how can I be right and all those people in the church be wrong, losing family, community, and reputation? Number 7 is the big ones: abortion, gay marriage, and did God have to beat the hell out of Jesus to keep us from going to hell? And number 8 is, does God hate government? Should a Christian be involved in politics? And number 9 is, do I have to go to church? What does Christianity look like in the 21st century? So those are the things we'll be discussing in our discussion in our Deconstruction You cohort meetings coming up shortly. And it all kicks off with our webinar on Sunday of Jesus, the Bad Evangelical. I'll get to some of your questions in just a bit. I'll probably go another 15 minutes or so here. But let me give you just a couple more reasons why I believe Jesus was a bad evangelical. He didn't believe the ends justified the means and thus wouldn't forgive misbehavior in order to have power. Jesus would never have voted an immoral, amoral, incompetent person into office just to try to accomplish the means of single issue voting. He would have found that absolutely contemptible. Jesus didn't cater to the rich and powerful, which would make him a bad evangelical. He forgave his enemies. In fact, he refused to have enemies of foreigners and people of other religions. In fact, he himself, as a child, was a refugee. So he fully understood what it meant to be an immigrant living in a foreign land. And so he didn't hate people of other nationalities as his own people did. And he didn't hate people of other religions as his own people did. So and as we know, that would make Jesus a very bad evangelical, because evangelicals believe it's okay to hate people that don't fit your cultural norm. You know, those BLM people, you know, they're Marxist. So that gives you the right to hate anybody that supports BLM, because we're very good at otherizing people. And then we are very much in line with anybody that isn't part of our nationality is a little bit less than us, because America's a Christian nation, you know, and therefore God likes us better than everybody else. Jesus would have been a bad evangelical because he changed the world by serving it and dying for it, rather than trying to take it over and take power from it. That would have made him a bad evangelical. He didn't believe in fighting for power and position at all. Jesus would have been a bad evangelical because he stood against law and order. He stood against religious rules. In fact, he said, I came to set people free from the bondage of religion and rules. He wasn't patriotic. Jesus would be a bad evangelical because he was not patriotic, even though that was a big deal for his people to be patriotic about their Jewish heritage and their Jewish religion. Jesus said, no, we're going to take this message to the whole world. And so he wasn't a very good evangelical, because like the report I saw over the weekend of the Patriot Church out of Nashville, Jesus would have been in there telling them off big time, because he was not patriotic. He was the opposite of that. He didn't actually have a traditional family, and he didn't preach about the traditional family. He made one statement about marriage being between a man and a woman, but he actually wasn't making a statement about the traditional family. That's something that Focus on the Family took James Dobson and used to abuse people viciously through the years. But Jesus wasn't talking about the traditional family. He didn't come from a traditional family. He lived communally in a village. And so he wouldn't have even known there was such a thing as a mom, dad, 2 kids, and a white picket fence. He would have never known that family. And he certainly didn't live in that family as an adult. And so he'd never espoused and preached about the traditional family, and he would not have cursed people for not living in a traditional family as all. As Joy says on YouTube, the nuclear family as it is today didn't even exist. That's right. Jesus would have never known what James Dobson says has to be what we impose on the world, which is mom, dad, and 2 kids. Jesus would have never known such a family, much less have espoused such a thing. So he was a very, very bad evangelical. He didn't believe it was important for people of his religion to take over the government in order for God's plan to be fulfilled, which would make him a bad evangelical. And he didn't ever say, love the sinner, hate the sin. And therefore Jesus would be a bad evangelical. So that's my idea. Someday I'm going to put that into an ebook of why I think Jesus is a very, very bad evangelical. And so what are your thoughts on all of that? And again, let me just encourage you as a part of this. If you've been looking for a space to have discussions about deconstruction, I want you to join me for a webinar on Sunday called Jesus the Bad Evangelical, free to everybody. And we'll talk about, is it okay to deconstruct, and why I believe Jesus was the original deconstructionist and was a radical deconstructionist. And we'll talk about, is it okay to deconstruct? And that will lead in to my 2 deconstruction cohorts. One which is going to be here locally in person in Central California, if you want to join that, and another that will be online. All of that information is on links in my bio. And for those of you on YouTube, you can see the 9 major themes of deconstruction that we'll be dealing with. All right. So out of all that, I got a few minutes here. What questions, thoughts do you have that you want to share about deconstruction or about Jesus being a bad evangelical? Ms. Emerson says, I've been looking for something just like this. Thank you, Pastor. Awesome. I hope I get to meet you through all of this very soon. So yeah, click on the link in my link tree in my bio, and it'll show you how to sign up. And if you're just joining, I love if you let me know where you're joining from. I just think there's something about place that helps us connect to each other. Tiberius Fang says, thank you for spreading your positivity. Snicklefritz says, I agree that revival is certainly coming from the deconstructionists. I hope it is. I think revival is something very different than what I thought revival is. But Snicklefritz, what does revival mean to you? I would love to hear what revival means to you. Sorry, I have to take a drink, even though I know that's a disgusting swallowing sound. I might not believe, but I believe in people like you. Thank you, Ms. Zanya. Very cool. You're a beautiful person, she says. Oh, that really warms my heart. Thank you very much. Well, they sure preach it and teach it in the evangelical churches. Yeah. I don't think they hate him as a group. Who, Ronald Patrick, do you not think they hate? What would he have thought about abortion, says Lead the Way Coach. I think Jesus what Jesus commanded us is to love people. So we would have loved the people in an abortive situation, no matter what. He would have been sad that they got into that situation, and I think, like anybody, he would be sad that they were in a situation where an abortion became the best option. But in no way did he ever indicate that abortion is the worst sin that could be committed anywhere in the world. Evangelicals say life begins at conception. There's actually zero support for that in the Bible. The Bible is much more clear in two thoughts: that life begins when Jesus thought about, or when the Creator thought about it at the beginning of creation. It says, even in Psalm 139, which Christians quote to me about abortion all the time, it says, you knew me when I was in the depths. It's talking about when the earth was being created. God foreknew everybody at that point is the concept. So God didn't just start knowing you at conception, according to the Bible. God knew you at the creation of the earth. And so not only by the evangelical thought process would abortion be making a life decision, but the Catholic belief that contraception is taking life out of the decision-making of God's hands and putting it into human would be a sin. And not only would that, but not procreating would be considered equally a sin in that mindset. So Jesus would have been honest about what the scripture said and what the mindset of God is in that situation. Christina says, I like your points about Jesus not involving himself in politics and not thinking it was important to take over government. Yeah. Jesus would not have been holding signs and calling mothers murderers. That is very true. Nor he wouldn't call Joe Biden a baby killer, nor endorse anybody doing so. And in fact, he would be very angry. He said, you've heard it say, don't murder, but I say, if you call your brother Raka, you are the one deserving of hellfire. And I think if Jesus were on earth today, he would say, you've heard it say, don't commit abortion, but I say, if you call somebody a baby killer, you are the one worthy of hellfire. That's exactly what he would say. Ms. Emerson says, just signed up, easy. Looking forward to the webinar. Thank you, Ms. Emerson. It's Sunday, 5:30 Pacific. Jesus, the Bad Evangelical, a free webinar where we'll start talking about deconstruction. Short, bored, Orty says, wow, that's awesome. Ms. Zanya says, no one should be called a baby killer. I agree. Joy says, for sure, yes, yes, yes. On YouTube. He would be fighting for the things that would actually make abortion unnecessary in most cases. I actually really, really believe that. I believe Jesus would be adamant if he were on earth today. Like, if you don't want abortion to happen, if you're really pro-life, then what you need to do is make it easy for a woman in poverty in particular to have a baby, that there be free health care for her, free child care, that what she needs. I saw a debate the other day between Ben Shapiro and Anna Kastmeyer, and she was saying something. I got to look up this stat. I probably shouldn't quote a stat that I haven't looked up, but she said for a poor person in America, child care, you have to be a 2-income family now. So if you have children, and Christians are supposed to care about making it easy for people to have children because that's God's plan for them, but they have to be two-income families just to make ends meet now. And so child care for that household is 22% of their income. Child care is a tax on the poor of 22% of their income. While for a rich person, child care is a blip on the radar of all their expense. Not paying for child care as a country is to put a huge tax on the poor if they want to work and make ends meet. Is the term conservative Christian an oxymoron when Jesus holds Moss? I don't know what that is. I don't know. Do you think conservative Christian is an oxymoron? Annie says, hi, thank you for everything. You're welcome. I'm back on TikTok, by the way. I just made 2 videos today. I haven't made a TikTok video for about 3 weeks. I've been writing. I've been writing my new website. I do emotional well-being coaching as well. And so I've been rewriting my curriculum. It's been really fun. I love coaching people. It's just so good. So I'm so excited. My new website probably won't come out till the end of the year or the beginning of next year, but I'm just so excited about all of it, and excited about this webinar we're doing on Sunday and our cohorts coming up for Deconstruction U. Conservative, as the word is used currently, is an oxymoron, says Ms. Emerson. We've missed you. Thought you might have been banned. Well, I've had my bouts of being banned and shadow banned by TikTok for sure. But no, I just needed some time to really get into the work. Like when I really start writing, I have to go into a cave, and my mind has just been blown the last few weeks because I've just been deep in this deep, dark cave of writing. But I have missed all of you guys. Walking in Faith says, I'll pray for you all. God bless. I hope you mean that heartfelt. Walking in Faith, because most of the time when I hear somebody say I'll pray for you, it means like I'll try to cast a spell from heaven to change you into believing the same way I believe. Opinion on Christians who nearly worship Trump at this point. Well, I'm not sure nearly is even the word. They do worship Trump at this point. Man, I saw a report on Sunday on the Evangelical Church in politics, and the worship of Trump is palpable. And there's no question partisan ideology has taken over a complete, huge portion of our religious community. And it's really scary. Daniel Casillo says, God is good, God is great, God is amazing, God is incredible, God changes lives. Amen. What do you mean by that, Daniel? I know a lot of people who claim to be followers of God who are some of the worst people I know. Some of them in my family. So you can yell God is great all day long, but if that doesn't do anything to change your heart, it's a ridiculous platitude. Do you have books or articles that can be accessed online? I have blogs on my if you go to pastor-paul.com, and then also, I think this is backwards, but I have my book. This is my novel, Joseph Comes to Town. This is my imagination of what Jesus would be like if he were on earth today and what he would say to the evangelical church. And again, you can find that on the links in my bio. Joy, who's my good friend. Hi, Joy. She says, the people in Jesus time on YouTube, by the way. People in Jesus' time would never have even had the choice to have all the governmental power and dictate to others. The idea that that's what Christianity is now is bizarre. I agree, Joy, but I would say one thing. The Sadducees, part of the difference between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they both were religious leaders that believed in a religious code. They had some differences in their religious beliefs, but one of the things that really separated the Pharisees from the Sadducees is the Sadducees both believed that their religion should be in charge of the government. So I would kind of disagree with you on that. They wanted a theocracy of Israel, that Rome would be thrown out and the theocracy of Jewish government would be in charge of the country. And the Sadducees were willing to partner with Herod, even though Herod wasn't. He was only half Jewish and really was a really brilliant king, but a really evil one. But they were willing to partner with Herod to try to partner with him to overthrow Rome and put the theocracy of Judaism back in charge of Israel, which they believed was the only thing that could make Israel great again. So I would probably disagree just a little bit. I actually think the evangelical mindset of let's take over the government and make this a Christian nation is very much a belief of the Sadducees and a little bit of the Pharisees. Remember the Pharisees in John 11, I think it is, say, hey, if Jesus keeps going on doing what he's doing, people are going to believe in him and the Romans are going to come and they're going to take our religion and take our country. So very much the religious system of the day was partnered with the idea of governmental power being a part of God's plan. They wanted to make Israel great again by putting their religion in charge of the country. That's why they hated the Samaritans so deeply, because the Samaritans were Jewish people who had been intermingled interracially with other races and with other religions. And they felt it was a bastardization. And ultimately why Saul of Tarsus felt it necessary to kill Christians is because he believed that Judaism was supposed to be in charge of the government of Israel, and God was withholding that from happening because there were people bastardizing the religion. And so if they could kill all the Christians and cleanse the Jewish religion, he believed the Messiah would appear. And both, the Pharisees and Sadducees, Saul of Tarsus as a Pharisee believed that the Messiah would put their religion in charge of the government again. So they very much believed in a government takeover and throwing Rome out. So that's where I see the biggest parallel between Pharisaism and evangelicalism is that right there. And then the evangelicals and the Sadducees, in that they would be willing to partner with an evil leader, Trump, as the Sadducees were willing to partner with Herod, and the Pharisees wouldn't have it because they just thought Herod was purely evil. But the Sadducees were like, yeah, he's evil and he's not really Jewish, but he's our hope for taking over the government. So we'll partner with him, just the same as evangelicals would say, well, I don't agree with everything Trump says, but God cares so much about abortion, I'm jumping in with him. I'll forgive anything he does. Sorry, I went Southern on you there, but it does seem to be a Southern mindset. All right, I'm going to have to go, everybody. Any other questions? Christina says, so similar to the evangelical mindset. One more time, Sunday webinar, Jesus the Bad Evangelical. Click on the link tree in my bio to sign up, absolutely free. And then out of that will flow 2 Deconstruction U cohorts, one that will be in person locally here in Central California, and the other that will be online for anybody anywhere. We're going to hold down the total. So you got to sign up pretty quickly, because once we hit a particular cap, we're going to then close it out. So Stan Girl says, oops, guess not. I asked you on your Q&A about Bibles. Can you speak to that now, or do you have time? You asked about a progressive Bible. I honestly don't know. Like, I really believe I read the English Standard Version of the Bible more than any other, because I think it's as accurate as any translation we have. But I also look at so many other translations. So I get concerned about progressive translations versus it. I think you need to read the Bible. And then when something hits you as a concept like, ooh, I think this is important for me to hear, then you need to look at a bunch of other translations and then look at, send me a DM and say, what do you think about this? And I'll just point you to any resource that I know of, because I think whenever we start, I get worried when we get into this. Let's make a progressive translation. Let's make some. I'm a big believer in find your version that inspires you. And mine's the English Standard Version, the ESV. But I all the time am reading the New Living Translation. I'll look at the New American Standard Version, NASB, because I want to see all kinds of different translations and what different people thought, so that I'm making sure I'm getting all the information. So, yep, that would be great, you guys. You're a true good man, Pastor Paul. Walking in Faith says false. Look like Rains just signed up. I okay. You just Stengro, you remind me something. Do not read the King James Version. It is a terrible translation. It is not accurate. It is not an accurate translation of the Bible. It's one of the worst translations you can have. Now, there are new King James versions out there that are kind of cool. I grew up with King James language, so I kind of like to read the New King James every once in a while just to get that feel of the language. But do not read the old KJV. It is not an accurate translation in the slightest. So I would strongly recommend against that. But whenever you read something in the Bible and it inspires you to like, ooh, I need to apply this to my life, I strongly encourage you to search it out first. Ask people around you, what does this mean to you? Say, I think this means this to me. I think I need to change this in my life because of this, and get that input from people so that and read commentaries. Christina says, make sure you have good commentaries. I read several commentaries on everything, and I don't fully agree with any of the commentators, but I just love to get a full 360 perspective of what I'm reading and then make my determinations off of that. What makes the KJV more inaccurate than other translations? Well, first, it was originally translated from some manuscripts that we now have much more older manuscripts that are more true to the reality, and King James wanted the Bible to be written in a way that supported his kingship and power. So it is a very inaccurate. It was very man inspired as a translation, because the guys who were translating were in the employ of King James, and he had all the power to kill them if he didn't think they were doing it right. So he wanted them to write a Bible that supported his kingship and his worthiness as king and as an authoritarian leader of the country. So it's a very skewed writing of the Bible. Gosh, I got to get going. What does Acts 4:32 through 36? Well, I don't have the Bible completely memorized, so let me look it up. It's interesting. Nobody's ever asked me that before. Oh, shoot. Where did it go? Acts 4. What is it? Acts 4:32 through 36. Now the full number of those who believed were of one heart and soul. No one said that any of the things that belonged to him was his own, but they had everything in common. And with great power, the apostles were giving their testimony to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus. And great grace was upon them. There was not a needy person among them. Oh, so yes, I get what you're saying. Barnabas sold a field. He didn't sell the field and then say, I'm going to do something with it to make myself feel good and feel like a charitable person. Instead, he gave it to the authorities and said, you do with this as you see fit. And yes, I think it's really, I think the Bible is clear over and over again that not taking care of the needs of the poor and the marginalized is what God cares about more than anything else. Much more than passing a law to ban abortion, certainly much more than passing a law to ban gay marriage. And so, yes, the early church worked as God wanted, and that was, there will be no poor among you. That if you are following God, you won't have poor people around you. And then people say, yeah, but Jesus said the poor you will always have with you. You need to understand that he was saying that in mocking tones. He was mocking Judas, who had said, she should have sold that perfume and given the money to the poor. And he was like, the poor you'll always have with you, right, Judas? he was taking a common saying. And the funny thing, the ironic thing is he was actually then quoting a portion of Deuteronomy that, again, the whole portion, if you read the whole thing, says, if a community of people is following God, there will be nobody poor among them. And that's how God judges a people group. Do you have poor and marginalized people? If you do, then you haven't fully realized the truth of who God is and what his heart is for people. And the representation, theoretically, it doesn't always operate this way, but theoretically, the representation of our heart as a community in America is represented in our government. And so that's what government is meant to be. We elect officials that go reflect our heart in there. Now, partisanship and religion has sort of screwed all that up, and we need to change that. But yeah. Okay, I got to go. Suki Peach 2 says, do you support LGBTQ plus Christians? Absolutely. I support all Christians and I support all people. And it doesn't matter who they love or how they look at love. Or my question always is like, where you're finding intimacy, why is that the place you're finding intimacy? And is it a healthy place to find intimacy? And I believe that's what Jesus would have said as well. But absolutely, I am affirming of the LGBTQ plus community and love you all so much. And you're amazing Christians. And I love it. All right, guys, I got to go. We'll see you on YouTube. Don't forget Sunday webinar. Click on the link tree in my bio and sign up. I'll see you there.